Number 3, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, how much does inflation outstrip nominal wage growth for the next 3 years to March 2013, as forecast on page 63 of Budget 2010 Economic and Fiscal Update?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, it doesn't. In 2012 and 2013, as well as 2014, the forecasts the member refers to show quite the opposite, with nominal wages growing faster than inflation. In 2011, inflation is forecast to outstrip pre-tax wage growth, but that is simply because the table on page 63 doesn't take account of the tax switch on the 1st of October. After-tax wages are what matter to people, and the 1 October tax switch will increase people's after-tax wages. As I said in the House on Tuesday, real after-tax wages, that is, after tax and after taking into account inflation, will rise by over 1% in the last 3 months of the year.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister. Well, given that his online tax calculator doesn't take account of his own inflation forecasts, and he's now telling the House that his own budget doesn't take account of his own tax switch, how can he maintain New Zealanders will be better off when his budget is delivering higher prices, not higher wages? And does this explain the widening gap between New Zealand and Australia, estimated by his esteemed predecessor as having grown by 29%?
The Honourable Bill English.
No. But let me explain to the Minister again. He picked out... OK, the member. Let me explain to the member. Order. Well, he spends a lot of time in front of the mirror as a minister. That's what he sees when he looks in the mirror. Mr. Speaker, let me explain to the member. He sent us to page 63. And when I look at the figures on page 63, in the next 4 years, wages outstrip inflation in 3 of those years. Nominal wages outstrip inflation in 3 of those years. The 1 year where it doesn't is 2011, and the reason it doesn't is because GST increase pushes inflation higher. But of course, those figures don't take account of the income tax cut. And when you take account of the income tax cut, in all 4 years, wage increases outstrip inflation. So using the figures the member pointed out himself, he's wrong.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, would the Minister describe in plain English whether today's poor GDP figures, which are less than 1/4 of the 0.9% growth the Reserve Bank was expecting, is further evidence of a stalling economy and that has so far delivered only higher rents, higher doctors' fees and higher electricity and petrol prices for New Zealanders?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, no. The outlook for the economy is that it's rebalancing in just the way that it needs to, with stronger exports and stronger savings. It's also delivering more increases in real after-tax wages in the next year than that government delivered in the last 3 or 4 years in office. The fact is New Zealanders are being more careful with their spending, probably a bit more than we expected, and that's one of the reasons for the number today.
So it's their fault,
Bridges.
Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary to the Minister. Is 1.2% growth in real after-tax wages a significant increase?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the answer is that I wouldn't get too carried away with it, but it is pretty significant growth compared to what's happened in the past. If you use the figures that are used to calculate national superannuation entitlements, and have been for the last 15 years or so, under the previous Labor government, from September 2003 to September 2008, real after-tax wages grew by a total of only 0.3%. And they did go up a bit then when the tax cuts came in. And that's another reason why the wages will go up after these tax cuts come in. So the member can't claim that when Labor does a tax cut, the wages went up, but when National does it, they don't go up. Of course they go up.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, can the Minister guarantee that supermarkets and other retailers will not raise prices by more than 2.5% on the back of his GST increase from next week? And what enforcement powers are at his disposal to ensure that that will not occur?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, if supermarkets could put up their prices any day they like, they would have already done it. The fact is, I think many supermarkets will be putting up their prices less than GST. The figures, New Zealanders are being very careful with how they spend. Retailers are having to discount consistently to get their sales up, and it's not likely that we will see some burst of excessive pricing. If there is, then the member's free to complain to the Commerce Commission about it.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, do the retailers that he was just talking about that will have to discount include Contact Energy, who will increase their prices by 6% on October 1, bus fares in Wellington for some that are increasing 100%, and even the humble stamp that is increasing 20%? And if so, what has he done to ensure that none of those prices exceed the 2.5% GST increase?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the unfortunate thing for the member's theory is, in fact, forecasts of inflation are dropping, not rising. And if the member was such an expert on controlling prices, then why was it that the CPI under his government was almost 3% a year? It's currently around 1.2% a year. Food and vegetable prices have actually dropped by 6.5% per year in the last 2 years, compared to an increase of 4.9% a year under Labor. Petrol and diesel prices have dropped by an average of 4% a year, compared to an increase of 7.2% a year under Labor. Mr Speaker, that is why forecasts for inflation are now dropping, because a lot of prices are dropping and real after-tax incomes are rising.
Mr.
Point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
I think there may
The point of order has been called.
Mr Speaker, further to your earlier comments, I think there may still be a problem with the speaker system, because I wasn't sure whether he said it was growth or inflation that was dropping.
Order. Now, I said to the member the other day that he is a senior member in this House, and he knows that's not a point of order. And one day he will stretch my patience too far. Question number 4, Jonathan Young.